The problem with rehabilitation for brain injury is that it is a very expensive process and it can be difficult to fund. Other states have designed solutions to this problem by creating some sort of trust fund or some kind of state Medicaid waiver program so that the recipients can have access to services on an as-needed basis, basically over the course of their lives. A brain injury is something that can be permanent and life-changing and last for the rest of your life. And so what we need the government to understand, the state government to understand, is that we have to have funds available for these folks in order to get these services. So it's a twofold process. You have to have the rehab facility itself, but then you also have to have the monies to fund those individuals to get those services. And it has to be a long-term sustainable plan for them. It can't be a quick fix solution. It's got to be a stable source. Otherwise, these folks are just going to continue to draw on the resources of other agencies, such as potentially the jail systems, the substance abuse treatment programs, the homeless population. We could go on and on about where the brain injury survivors actually are, instead of being in the appropriate place, which is rehab or a long-term residential program. The folks that we see here in our practice, if they come from the legal background or having been in the criminal system in some fashion, then if you look at their history, there is typically some type of head trauma. And unfortunately, there's usually a multiple traumas that have occurred. So there might have been a motor vehicle accident, and then there might have been bar fights, and then there might have been a slip and fall, and once you have one head injury, you have a tendency to accumulate them over time. And so then once you start to have problems related to functioning from brain injury, you're more likely to end up in the criminal justice system because you're making poor choices, you have lost a lot of your supports, maybe you started to have problems with substance abuse. So it can be a downward spiral ending in the criminal justice system. Empirically, what we can say is that studies have been completed looking at prison populations in the lower 48, and those estimate that there's upwards of 2/3 of the inmates having had a history of brain injury. Can we definitively say that the brain injury is the cause of their criminal activity? Absolutely not. It's just a correlation, but certainly a large number of those persons have sustained a brain injury, and from what we know about activity after brain injury, we can assume that there's some level of responsibility there. And as I said, there is a greater propensity for additional injury once you've sustained your initial one, and so it can be said that they've probably had multiple trauma.